Welcome to Grit Growth Grace.
We're your hosts. I'm Crissy Morgan.
And I'm Kim Gibbs. We're two leaders navigating real life, real teams, real messiness.
We're showing up with grit, growth, grace, and a whole lot of honesty.
Welcome back to Grit Growth Grace. Today, we're bringing you two powerful themes we know you face often: quieting your inner critic and leading with vulnerability. This conversation is one about juggling confidence and credibility with exhaustion and expectation. And man, Crissy, don't we all kind of live that? Being high achiever.
We are just so excited that you've tuned in and that you're going to give us your time today. And if you've ever felt like you needed to have it all together, which as moms and leaders, usually that's the way it goes, or just to be taken seriously, and you felt that inner critic screaming, you're not good enough, you are definitely not alone. That's normal. On today's episode, we're going to take a deep breath, do a reset, and remind everyone that we all struggle with the inner critic.
All of us, not just women, men do too. And it's something that is a huge challenge. Research shows that 75% of women experience daily negative self-talk. I can tell you it is probably one of my least favorite qualities of myself. People will actually point it out to me. But what if we could name that inner critic or that judge, challenge it, and lead with our truth instead? Just take that moment.
That's right. Kim, let's get into it. Let's talk about what does it really look like to lead from vulnerability with honesty, grit, and grace. So let's do it.
Let's go. All right, name it to tame it. Let's start by noticing the voice we're up against, our inner critic. She's not subtle, and she is absolutely not kind. And mine is just a poopy face.
Kim, that's hilarious. And we talk about this a lot because I know that this is something that you've confided in me that you struggle with a lot. And, we've talked through it and different things to help with that. But what would you say your inner critic sounds like? And when do you notice that she's the loudest?
So 100% she is the loudest when I'm doing something that I truly care about, either the present moment or the outcome, that I'm really invested in the outcome. So when you and I decided, like, forget it, we talk about this stuff all day long. I know there's other middle-aged women that really could connect with us, that are surrounded by men or people unlike themselves, that we can do this. And then I mean, it took a lot. It was like I think it probably took me 3 months to get my "who do you think you are" out of my head. And so I essentially paused, see if she was trying to protect me or just hold me back. And I think that's the differentiator, right? Like, is this a survival thing? Am I really actually making a mistake here? Or is this just a fear thing because I'm uncomfortable? And when you're in growth a lot, you oftentimes already are uncomfortable just because there's a lot of change. So being able to differentiate, is this uncomfortable because I'm going in the wrong direction? Or is this uncomfortable because my inner critic is being in poopy pants?
Well, I mean, it's definitely about the power of awareness, right? You need to know, is your inner critic being a poopy pants and creating a problem? Or I mean, it's hard to challenge something if you don't recognize it and acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can do when we start to hear that inner critic getting really loud and wanting to be a poopy pants is to name it. Mm-hmm. And make sure that we recognize it and rewrite the script, right?
Right.
Tell yourself, I am not doing that today. I have more to offer than that.
Mhm.
and I'm not doing it today.
Yeah. And I think it's that moment making the decision. This is not protecting me. This is me trying to actually essentially self-sabotage. My critic is self-sabotaging me, and I can write my own script, and I should go for it and lean in. So, fun fact data, according to the National Science Foundation, the average person has around 60,000 thoughts per day, and about 80,000 of them are negative. And women are disproportionately affected by this because they internalize these due to social expectations. And I know when you work in a male dominated industry, you have all these men who just sort of verbally vomit whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, all over the place. And the second you feel very uncomfortable interjecting, and that inner critic will come right up and be like, no, what you have to say isn't important. That sounds negative. You shouldn't sound negative. Why are you, you then end up spiraling about negativity even, and you're not even on the thing that you were originally thinking you should say. So I definitely know that's absolutely a reality for women.
Yeah, and you've gotta see her clearly. And again, it goes back to that awareness, and then start to question, where is this coming from? Why is she screaming at me? Why is she being so loud? Because that voice did not appear out of nowhere. We need to find out, where did she come from, because she learned her lines from somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Crissy, when you trace your critic's voice, what is the root of it?
For Kim, for me, it really started way back when I was a kid. Um, I had that classic middle child syndrome, so it was either be exceptional or be unnoticed. So it was get the good grades, work, support myself, do the exceptional things to get that praise, and that's really how I shaped myself and treated myself and how I learned to lead others. And I'm not even sure if those values were even mine. It's like, where did that come from? And so it's like that's the story I told myself. You either need to be super exceptional or nobody's going to pay attention to you.
Yeah, and that's tough. And it's tough when that's consistent. And oftentimes, especially I feel like for women, and especially for women that are in industries that are uncharted for women, meaning you are still an outlier, it's not an original thought. It's a remix of what other people are sort of putting in on you. And, because they're afraid of something, they're putting it on you because you're an easy scapegoat, or you feel like they're putting it on you. And then your inner critic, oh, I'm going to get on that wagon. That's right. They gave me the side eye. Definitely probably shouldn't have said what I was going to say. So something that I've done, or a good action item for when you have that belief of like, I need to be exceptional, or I need to be excellent, and then your inner critic pushes you down and essentially questions everything you're doing, is to write out the why. Like, journal out, where did this like judge or inner critic come from? Why does your adult self now believe that whatever your inner critic is saying, that you don't have the ability to go and make a meaningful impact or presentation to a team, or that you don't have the ability to increase profits by 20% or productivity by 50% or whatever it is? So, write down, like, was it your father? Was it your piano instructor? Was it that you were the middle child and you need that? And just get connected to that, because if you can quickly do that leap from like, oh my God, that is my grandmother just railing at me again for not keeping my hands under the table, I can let that go. It's not about me. It's about that person's thing. So I think that for me has been a good thing, identifying it and journaling about it.
And there's a lot of data to support how important that is, especially in times when you're not really sure, to go ahead and journal it. And psychology today, it and that research shows that naming the origin reduces the emotional impact by 40%. And when you take the time to get quiet with yourself, do the reflection, and understand where it's coming from, you can really start to get to the root and the why. And when you start to understand it, that's when you can start attacking it and get better at it. And so, when that's happening, and you ask yourself, now what? When that voice really starts to hijack your brain, when you've got something high stakes, you've got to ask yourself, now what am I going to do?
Yeah. And when you do have that identifying point of origin, it's easier to sort of like put it off of you and recognize that it is a separate, this is just your brain being silly.
Yeah.
So moving into grace over grit, I would say that this is where you kind of have to go, okay, that was my grandmother telling me that if I don't get great straight A's and sit and be quiet and still and pretty in the corner, I won't amount to anything and a man won't take care of me. Or, we are of the age where our grandparents, my grandparents at least, are from the Great Depression era. So we're talking a totally different generation of upbringing and expectations than we have. And, they all make imprints on you. So let's talk about grace, that space where we pause, and how I know for myself personally, we sort of are told to just sort of grit it. You just grit and get through it. But sometimes in this grace, we can slow down and have more meaningful leadership and impact.
When was the last time you had to choose grace over grit, Kim?
Well, I feel like I have to choose grace over grit a lot because when you are really driven, you do get results from grit, right? Like your outcomes oftentimes are tied to grit. So when you name your inner critic and you recognize it's your inner critic, and it may not even be like your real beliefs, it's just something that somebody else put together with you, you start to notice it in your own life, right? And so last month I had about, I don't know, 3 giant deadlines, and I was really fried, and I have been for a while because I've been actually doing another person's job. And I took a weekend away, and that is like totally counterintuitive to something that I don't do. It was my first time that I took a weekend away from my toddler, and I took 2 days, and I saw a girlfriend that I've had a relationship with for the majority of my life. We've been friends since high school. And so being authentically myself was totally fine. And what it did was it not only allowed me to rest because I actually didn't have to get up and do toddler stuff in the morning, but I also got, I had somebody who was like, no, you can absolutely be exhausted. You can absolutely be pissed off that things aren't going the exact way that you worked your butt off to get them to happen. And when I returned, I was able to have so much more clarity. It's like the fog sort of had lifted, and I was able to pursue my business goals with more focus and determination. And that rest, it's definitely not quitting. It was resilience, and it recharged me.
Yeah, I mean, so many times grace is seen as a weakness, but it's not. It's wisdom. It's being willing to accept others as they are, faults and all. We all have our level of fault, so it's giving people that grace, or when they make a mistake or something like that, and it just shows your willingness to accept others, and that makes you a stronger leader. And, one of the things, especially when you are struggling and you are starting to feel fried or whatever, you could take like you said, the pause, do a 60-second reset. You can close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and give yourself the grace to say, I am human and I'm allowed to make mistakes, and give yourself that permission, give yourself that grace. and focus on other senses, your sense of smell, your sense of taste, and just allow yourself to rewire the brain and reset.
Yeah. And I would say self-compassionate leaders, especially now, foster emotional intelligence. And that emotional intelligence allows for stronger teams because you lean into your differences as strength instead of almost like fueling a person's inner critic fire. And when we lead ourselves with grace, meaning we give ourselves the space to recognize, like, oh, okay, that was my grandmother telling me that I won't get noticed unless I sit perfectly. We build a culture where others feel safe and do the same for not only themselves but those around them. And we want that safety that is so much more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about that, we talk about vulnerability and how do you be vulnerable without oversharing, and you want to be authentic and you want to create that connection, because when you're being vulnerable, you're being authentic about it, it definitely creates connection. And you want to make sure that's the place where it's coming from. If you're just speaking from a place of pain, it can really confuse people, like, why are you sharing this with me?
Yeah. How do you know when you're sharing in service versus seeking validation or looking for that praise?
I like to make sure that the timing is right. I ask myself, am I sharing this moment or this thing with my team or a person because I'm trying to build trust and connection, or to model courage and growth? Or am I just trying to commiserate? So, I really have to ask myself, is this the right time to share? And making sure that when I do share something that's happened, that I've already gone through that healing process. If I'm in the midst of the pain, I don't want to try to just cast that off to somebody else. And again, they're looking at me like, why the heck are you sharing this with me? And that's not easy to do, especially in the workplace. I've had it happen to me many times. I've had many failures. I do my best to grow from them and do the same thing with my team. But we had an incident. It's been a little while now. It's been several months, but I was asked by the customer service team about a commitment to a customer. They wanted to make a change to a ship date. They wanted to pull something up, and I went ahead and made the commitment. And because it was some email communication back and forth between the two of us, I didn't have my team, tagged on the email, and I failed to communicate that to them. And that was a huge miss on my end, and not something that is normal. But I make mistakes, and I had to go to my team, and I'm like, I'm not going to cover this up. I'm going to be honest about it. It created a lot of unnecessary stress to several of the work cells, down through quality into shipping. Everyone had to pick up the pieces at a much faster rate. And it was a very humbling situation where I had to have that honesty and bring the group together and say, here's where I screwed up. And I was absolutely amazed at their response. They're like, yeah, we're going to rally around you. We're going to push this order through. Absolutely. We're going to make the commitment. And they're like, yeah, thanks for being honest and not trying to cover it up, and try to blame it on somebody else. And they're like, I know that if this had happened to me, you'd have my back. And so I've got it for you. And that was another pivotal moment where it was like creating that connection with my team that made us stronger. And it was awesome. I mean, it was a crappy thing that happened, but it really built that connection.
Which is great, because vulnerability isn't about a spotlight. It's really about a service, and your willingness to be vulnerable in that moment definitely not only, I think, empowered them to recognize that you are human, but then they also had a win out of it. And having a win, especially when you had to like come hat in hand, is fantastic. So I my action item for this one is when you are sharing, are you sharing from a scar or are you sharing from an open wound? And why are you sharing? What is the reason? Um, I'm personally am not comfortable sharing a lot of things, and this has been a thing that I've had to actually try to do, and it has been very challenging. But I have, when I am very mindful about that, to make sure that it is a scar, not an open wound, and that I do truly have a reason to share. The impact is every time I'm always surprised about it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of research out there that you can find, and just looking at Kristen Neff's research, it shows that vulnerable leaders retain more emotionally intelligent teams, and it's because of that willingness to be vulnerable at the right time and be honest about it, and that is so key. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say? You know. How does that kind of truth telling help us lead with grit, growth, and grace?
Wow. I think one of the, because I'm new to the sharing thing, one of the most challenging things I've done is share about my depression. And I think any woman who's had a baby has had a moment where they're like, is this postpartum depression, or am I just okay? Or does every mom feel like this? And so I had an employee who actually went on vacation, and he wasn't sure he was going to go because we were very busy, and I encouraged him to go. And I didn't know that he was having other things happen in his life. And he got back from his vacation when his vacation was over, and then he didn't return to work. And he called and did the whole, he told us, it wasn't like he didn't show up. But there's a certain level of due diligence one has to do when you're in manufacturing, that if somebody doesn't show up to work for an extended period of time, you usually have to get some sort of release to work because you can't have an injured person at work.
Right.
And so I pushed him to share with me what was going on, because it had now been to the point where I would essentially need a doctor's note for him to return to work to say he's physically fit enough to work. And he was very vulnerable with me and said he was having a hard time. And so I leaned into this and I was like, okay, I'm going to tell him about myself and about how when I had Genevieve, I absolutely had depression, and I had to deal with that depression. And I'm so glad I told him that I went through that moment, because he not only saw me as a human, and at that point I was obviously through that and was dealing with it in a much better way, but it gave him permission to be human too and almost take care of himself. And so he took care of himself then for the time he needed, and he is kicking butt, and he has thanked me at least 3 different times for being open about that. And he's, I mean, I would have never in a million years shared something that personal with anyone at work before. And so it was it was very uncomfortable for me to do that, but it made a profound impact on him. And he is a very key, integral part of our entire organization. So I'm very glad that I did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so freeing when you can do that and share. And again, it's not a weakness. It's your truth, and it will make you, have that vulnerability to share. And sometimes you just have to remind yourself of that too. Like, I know for myself, I have Post-its, I have postings, different things in my office to constantly remind myself throughout the day that I don't have to hustle for my worth. I am doing what I need to do, and I am capable, and I can be vulnerable with the team. And so that is just a beautiful story, Kim, because depression is nothing to to be light about, and to be able to share that with someone. That's absolutely amazing that you could do that. That just shows a ton of strength and courage to be able to do that. So kudos to you.
Well, and it was very uncomfortable in the context of like, you have this expectation of yourself. Your inner critic's going like, no, you are supposed to be this like armored leader and not have any problems. But had I not shared that with him, I don't know that he would have like, it was almost as though he exhaled and was like, okay, if my boss can have it and still function and perform at the level she performs at, then I can manage this. I can move forward through this. Because anybody who has had depression knows that when you're in the throes of it, especially in the beginning, and you don't know that you've got depression, you literally are like, what in the world am I? Why do I feel like the world is this just dark place that I'm walking around in, and you don't really want to talk to anyone? Yeah. So I'm very grateful that it turned out the way it did. And I'm glad I had that vulnerability, because it was a huge lesson for me. I mean, it was a huge lesson. And psychological safety is a top factor in high performing teams. Like, I need my team to feel like they can be themselves and feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to do that and give people the space for that does allow them to be high performing, and it helps you to retain talent because they feel like they can be safe at work. Yes. So, we've covered a lot today, yes. Kim. So let's just kind of walk through, like, wrap it up, to let, everybody know, like, here's, some key takeaways from today. One, name your inner critic to diminish her power. When you identify your inner critic, you recognize her tone, you take away her invisibility, and naming her helps you shift from judgment to curiosity and to regain control over your narrative.
That's right. Number 2 is to trace that origin of your inner critic. Understanding your inner critic is not necessarily actually who you are. It's oftentimes something that is either from your childhood, expectations, even your workplace, or even for a lot of women, just cultural norms. Like, you don't even realize it. And as a mom of a daughter, I can't tell you how many times I catch myself being like, no, Genevieve, be a good girl. And I'm like, oh, shoot. If I had a boy, I definitely wouldn't be like, no, Jerome, be a good boy.
Yeah, right.
I'd be like, oh, they're just being a boy. It's going to go hit something with a stick. So I seriously think that, like, recognizing that origin voice essentially removes power from it and allows you to see what your real truth is.
Yeah. And you 3, you want to choose grace over grit. Taking rest and recharging is not a weakness. You need those moments or you're going to burn out. You've got to give yourself grace. It's an act of leadership. Even taking that 60-second pause multiple times throughout the day is a simple technique, but it can be a very powerful practice for resilience and just self-compassion.
Yeah. And I know that that's something you do very well. And it's something I don't do very well. And my inner critic is telling me you should do that better. But it is something that I do know when I am cognizant of it, it definitely makes a difference for me, that pause. And number 4 is vulnerability is a leadership strength. So when it's rooted in the healing and you're sharing from a place of reflection, not the rawness or the coming in hot, you build a lot of trust and connection. And this empowers others to feel psychologically safe and perform at a really high level and have trust.
Yeah. So, before you close out your day or as you're going from meeting to meeting or thing to thing, just take that moment to pause and give yourself that chance to reset.
Yeah. Ask yourself, what would it look like to lead from truth, not toughness, this week, today, in the meeting? That's something I have to ask myself a lot.
And we would love to hear from you. We love to see the comments. We love to get the feedback. We want to know what's one way that you're quieting your inner critic or leading with more grace. And you can share that with us in any of the platforms that you might be listening to us.
Yeah, I think we're on Instagram at Growth Grace and Facebook and LinkedIn at GR3 Podcast. Or you can send us a voice note to our website. Your story might just inspire another woman who needs it, and recognize that your comments do make a difference, because it does add to the community that is, a middle-aged woman who was once this and now has all of this responsibility. And we all have that inner critic that goes, why haven't you been amazing today? So we appreciate you so much for showing up and listening and supporting.
And you're not alone. And by being here and spending time with us today, you've shown that you want to take care of yourself and give yourself that grace. And we appreciate you.
And so thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful afternoon, day, evening, whatever it is. Thank you so much for listening to Gross Grace. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us on Grit, Growth, Grace podcast. We hope today's episode gave you new insights and a spark to start planning with purpose.
Remember, growth happens one step at a time. Take something from today, whether it's a tool, a quote, or just a fresh perspective, and put it into action this week.
And don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with someone who's ready to plan their way to success.
We'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media, like and follow, or just let us know how you're taking charge of your goals.
Until next time, keep building with grit, growing with intention, and leading with grace. We'll see you soon.